Hi, welcome to Made in the Lowcountry. My name is Stephanie, and today we're going to do a very super quick and easy project to finish out our Christmas gift basket or stocking stuffers that we've been working on, and it's going to be a tea towel from start to finish. We're going to make it using diaper cloth fabric and just a couple. I use my scraps to make these little tea towels, so you can see that I have a few seams where I've sewn my pieces together. You can make these borders any size you wish. I only had a 5-inch strip, so I cut it in half and did 2 inches because I wanted to do both sides of the towel. So I'm going to make these again from start to finish. You can definitely buy a pre-made dish towel or dishcloth and sew the border on. So we have a main fabric and an accent fabric, which just gives it a little pop of color and provides a little extra accent. So let's get started. You can cut your diaper cloth any size you wish. I'm going to cut mine 15 by 30 today, but just be sure you have your fabric doubled over because this is going to be, we're going to sew these two sides. We're going to cut this out and sew these two sides together, and it just gives it more absorbency to use if you're wanting to use it to dry dishes or something other than just for decoration. So it's going to be two-sided, and we're simply going to cut this out 15 by 30, and then we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam and sew all the way around, leaving a small place to turn. So I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch foot with a guide to sew around. I have right sides together on the diaper cloth. I've marked my stop point with a pin to remind me after I sew all the way around, and this will be my start point. I think I left about 4 inches between my start and my stop. It gives me plenty of room to turn because this is kind of a big tea towel. So I'm going to sew again using my 1/4 inch seam all the way around, starting here and stopping at the pin. All right, we're coming up on my pin. So when I get to that point, I'm going to back stitch just to strengthen that area. And I'm going to cut my thread. I'm going to trim the corners. Just don't trim into your stitch line. Then I'm just going to reach my fingers in, go all the way to the opposite end, and pull it through. Just be careful you don't push through your fabric and break your seams. And next I'm going to give it a press. So when I'm pressing, I want to be sure that I turn in the turning point and press about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so when I go back and top stitch it, it'll close nicely. And if you need to drop a clip there, that's fine too, or a pin. I'm going to just drop a clip there. So now I'm going to switch to my edge stitch foot, and then I'm going to move my needle over a couple of places. And I'm just going to catch the edge. All right, our dishcloth is made, so let's go cut our decorative trim that we're going to put on it. For this next part, you have a little bit of a decision to make. You can decide how wide you'd like to have your trim. So what we're going to do is sew it onto the back. Let it hang over. We're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we're going to flip it around and stitch it down to the right side. So I did mine 2.5 inches just because my scraps were 5 inches, so I cut them in half because I want to do both sides. And as you can see, I had to piece it because, again, this is scrap, so this is a great scrap buster. What you want to do is have a 1/2 inch on each side overhang so we can tuck it after we turn it, so it has nice finished edges. So I'm going to just rough cut the other side, and then you'll want to do the same thing. So then you'll have a coordinating fabric that you'll cut at 1 inch, and you'll cut it the same way. You'll cut it the same length, and you can see again I had to piece it because it was scraps. So I'm just going to cut it at a 1/2 inch overhang on each side, and I'm just eyeballing that. I'm not measuring it. And then you'll want to take your 1 inch strip and fold it in half and press it. When you fold your little pieces in half to press them, I forgot to mention you need to fold them in half with wrong sides together so the right side is showing. I'm going to do the same exact thing for the other side. I'm going to let it overhang a 1/2 inch on each side, cut my 1 inch strip, and then I'm going to fold both of them and press them in half. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take that to our sewing machine, and we're going to align all of our raw edges, and we're going to go ahead and sew with a 1/4 inch seam, add the small border onto the larger border. Next, you're going to want to press it, and you're going to want that seam allowance to go down toward the bottom of the wide strip. Give it a nice press. Use steam if you need to. Now what we want to do is put the wrong side of your strip along the edge of the bottom of the towel and leave a little overhang on both sides. And we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam and just stitch that right along the bottom. Be sure that seam stays facing the proper way. And this is where we're going to fold and tuck these sides. Just going to turn it under and wrap it. And then I'm going to fold it up and pressing. Now just feel to be sure I'm rolled in tightly, but I'm not twisting the seam from underneath. Alright, so I'm just going to put a clip on each side, and I'm going to stitch close to the edge here. I'm going to stitch right in the ditch here, so this little flap will be free. So that's why we wanted that seam to be tucked down, because see, we're going to be sewing just on that seam, and you don't want to see the seam that's tucked down inside. So we're going to do that for both sides. We're going to sew along the edge, stitch in the ditch, do that for both sides, and our towel is done. I'm going to start right along this edge. I'm using the edge stitch foot again. I've moved my needle over a couple of places. I'm going to stitch up to this seam, and then I'm going to center my needle, and then I'm just going to run the guide right in the ditch along that seam. As soon as my needle, I actually went just a tad too far, so my needle is in the ditch now. I'm just going to leave the needle down and turn my fabric. And now I'm going to clear my needle position, so when it starts sewing, it'll be in the middle, it'll lift, and then it'll just stay right in the same spot. I'm just stitching right along the ditch. And I went back and dropped a pin in the center strip just to help hold everything in place. And we're going to do the same thing to the other side. So my towel is done. Both sides are trimmed. And this is what it looks like from the back. So there's no raw edges. Everything is finished. I hope you were able to make a few of these things with me this year. I'm going to be gifting the bowl cozies, the soap, the dishcloths, and the tea towels. I hope you have a wonderful holiday, and I will see you next year.